We're going to be talking about all the college football games that went down and what the AP poll looks like after a crazy week because crazy things happened. And let's just go right into it. Oregon versus Penn State. First of all, Oregon beat Penn State 27-24. And wait, no, that was not the score. Sorry.
Bama game score.
Yeah, that was the Bama game. Sorry. Oregon beat Penn State 30-20. They did not get the 2 points, so that's why it's a 6-point game in overtime. And I was crazy. That was very crazy. I was able to catch the end of the game. I don't know what to think because I did predict Oregon to beat Penn State. We were right because it was a really low scoring game most of the game, and they definitely got action late in the game, but through 3 quarters there was only 13 points scored. It was a low scoring game, and me and Quinn nailed that because not a lot of people were thinking they were thinking that it would be a little bit of a high scoring game, but stats that told the story were Penn State 3 yards per play in the first 3 quarters. All wide receivers had 3 receptions for 10 yards. And the Penn State box score, Drew Aller had a very quiet game. Did throw for 2 touchdowns, but he was 14 for 25, 137 yards, and a pick. Katron Allen had 12 carries, 54 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches. And Nick Singleton had a quiet game, 11 carries, only 21 yards. That you cannot have. And then 3 receptions for 30 yards. And their receivers did not do good. Like I said, all 3 receivers combined, I read that wrong, had 3 receptions for 10 yards. And Kyron Hudson had 0 catches. Trevor Pena had 2 receptions for 16 yards. And Devontae Ross had 4 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown, so pretty good. But on the Oregon side of things, Dante Moore had a game, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. The running back, Hill Jr., had 10 carries for 82 yards. DeCorian Moore had 7 receptions for 89 yards. Kenyon Sadiq had 6 receptions for 70. Oh, and Gary Bryant had 6 receptions, 55 yards, a touchdown. And then Dylan Thieneman had the game-winning interception. That was definitely a heartbreaker for Penn State fans because they needed that. They needed that win, and I'll tell you why later in the AP poll. But overall, that was a tough game for both teams, and Penn State held in there. But at the end of the day, a win and a loss are the 2 things that separate the game. It's not whether Penn State blew out Oregon in a certain category. It's you lost or you won, and that's really all that you can go by. By looks on the stats, you would think that Oregon blew out Penn State, but it was still they still made it interesting, but Oregon got the win, and now they're ranked number 2 for a reason.
Yeah, so the thing that everyone wants to say is same old Penn State, and I'm not going to blame this game on James Franklin. I think he can't win in the big game, but I still think he's a good coach. I just think it's Drew Aller. He had a good overtime besides that pick in the 4th quarter. That's when he really started to turn it on. But the first 3 quarters and the entire offense was just non-existent. The run game, well, that's probably the best part of their offense. They weren't there. Nick Singleton only had 21 yards the entire game. Drew Aller just couldn't get anything going. The receivers that they brought in, they only had 3 catches for 10 yards in those first 3 quarters, 3 yards per play. And then they turned it on in the 4th quarter. Devontae Ross had a touchdown, a big touchdown at that. And overall, these receivers, Trevor Pena, he only got 2 catches for 16 yards. Kyron Hudson had 0 catches. I think he had 4 targets. These receivers, while I do think that their receiving game is better than last year, I don't think that makes up for the absence of Tyler Warren. You're seeing him in the NFL, how good he is, and how big of a loss he is for Penn State. And they need somebody on the receiving game to step up. Devontae Ross, he stepped up in the 4th quarter, and then that's when Penn State's offense finally started to click. But Drew Aller, I said this last week, and I've thought this way before we started a podcast, ever since we've seen him in his first year at Penn State as a starter. he's just not that good. He'll have some good stats against the Nevadas and the Villanovas, but in the big game, it's not James Franklin, it's Drew Aller, and he didn't have a horrible game in the box score, but 137 yards is nothing to brag about. He had the game-losing interception where it was definitely a questionable play call because your run game finally started to work, and there's no time to lose. Just run the ball. They took a shot, bad throw. Dylan Thieneman made an excellent play. And ultimately for Penn State, my opinion on them hasn't really changed. I knew that their defense was going to be good. Deny Dennis Sutton was just a menace for Dante Moore to deal with. Their defense is going to be good. I have questions on their offense, and they've been answered in the way that Penn State fans are not really hoping for.
Yeah, so a tough game for Penn State fans because I feel like they can never get big wins. And that, sure, you can blow out teams by 50 points, but are those teams going to make a run of the Big Ten? No, you're beating teams like Purdue, Maryland, Rutgers, like all those low-tier teams of the Big Ten. That's what they're beating up on in the past years, but they can't beat the Ohio States, the Michigans, or the Oregons, and that's a big factor in this. And yeah, it's tough for Penn State fans. That's all I'm saying. Oregon, I'm not going to say that because we're going to talk about the AP poll later, but there's definitely arguments to be made about that. We're going to go to Alabama versus Georgia. That was huge for Alabama. I had Georgia beating them. I'll be real with you. Bama was 13 for 19 on the third down. Georgia was 2 for 8. It kind of, I don't know what to think because, yeah, that's absurd. How did Alabama have 20 third downs and Georgia only had 8, and it was that close of a game? But Georgia just kept driving down the field. As you can tell by the stats there, Alabama had a tough time. Their drives were a lot slower. Okay. Gunnar Stockton, clean pocket, was 20 for 23. Drop back attempts, 13 for 20, 130 yards and a touchdown. So very slow game. He didn't miss a lot of passes, but he didn't get a lot of yards. He didn't have an interception, but there was not much pressure. Wait. Sorry. Yeah. And you got to do better than that if you're Gunnar Stockton, and if you want to contend in the Big 12. Holy cow! If you want to contend in the SEC, Ty Simpson was 15 for 17 in the middle of the field, accounting for the Ryan Williams drop. That was crucial. But the Alabama box score overall, Ty Simpson was 24 for 38, 280 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. Jam Miller, 16 carries for only 50 yards. A slower game and a lot of carries, just didn't have any very big gain of big runs. Isaiah Horton had 5 receptions. Isaiah Horton, Ryan Williams, and Jeremy Bernard all had 5 receptions each. Holy cow, Quinn, I'm losing my mind right now. Isaiah Horton had 65 yards, Williams had 43, and Bernard had 35. Horton had a touchdown. So all the receivers, that shows you that Alabama definitely has some reliable receivers that you can really go to. Ryan Williams, Quinn said that Ryan Williams might not be the best receiver in Alabama, which is a big hot take. But if Ryan Williams isn't doing that, and you have a other receiver who's putting up better stats, that's just a very interesting take, and he is very right, I would say. Gunnar Stockton was 13 for 20, like I said, 130 yards, a touchdown. Chauncey Bowens had 12 carries for 120 yards, 9.9 yards per carry. That's kind of absurd. 4 receptions, 22 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The receivers did not do much. Colby Young, 4 receptions, 60 yards. Zakiah Branch, 3 receptions, 35 yards. And London Humphreys, 1 reception, 9 yards. But Georgia definitely made it interesting. But I feel like Alabama they showed their dominance in that game, especially beating Georgia. I think they had won 33 straight at their place. And it just goes to show that the SEC is completely wide open, and especially with Ole Miss and LSU. For crying out loud, Mississippi State. Why did I just start for crying out loud? Oh! Mississippi State, for crying out loud, could win the SEC. There is not going to be a single SEC team that is undefeated in SEC play. That is not even a hot take. No SEC team will be undefeated in SEC play. Not Texas A&M, not Tennessee. Tennessee isn't actually. Not Alabama is. No one will be undefeated. Not a hot take. That's just facts. And it was only week 5. There's still a lot of time for Georgia, but I'm not very nervous for them because the SEC is one of the hardest conferences to play in, if not the hardest. So Georgia fans, don't be scared just yet, but Alabama fans are definitely hype after that win, and they're not really – they moved on from the Florida State game.
Yeah, so this game, there's not really a ton – I wouldn't be worried if you're a Georgia fan, and except for this one aspect of the game. Statistically, according to PFF, they have the worst pass rush in the entire Power 4, third worst in the entire FBS. And they don't have a sack by a defensive lineman. They have 4 sacks on the season, all by linebackers. Ty Simpson had a clean pocket on 35 out of his 40 dropback attempts. And he took the advantage of it, 23 for 33, 266 yards, and 2 touchdowns. However, there was no pressure on Gunnar Stockton, and he didn't take advantage of it either, 30 for 20, 130 yards, and 1 touchdown. So Georgia, I don't really know what to say. I just don't think that they have a good pass rush. It's nothing you can really coach in. It's still early in the season. I guess you can, but they've played Georgia and Tennessee, who, granted, Tennessee has a pretty good offensive line. Alabama's offensive line, while inconsistent, they still have a guy like Caden Proctor. And this Georgia pass rush, they need to get going. They didn't. Ty Simpson is one of the best quarterbacks with a clean pocket, and he showed exactly why. He was elite in the middle of the field. He was 15 for 17 in the middle of the field, including that Ryan Williams drop. So technically he'd be 16 for 17, 1 incompletion, and then he would have a ton more yards with that Ryan Williams deep ball drop. Ryan Williams, I said this earlier, he's not the best receiver on his team. I think that's Jeremy Bernard. I still believe that, even though he did have a better game. I don't know. Ryan Williams, he's just struggling with drops this year. I don't know why, but we need to see that improved. But for Georgia, the one positive is their running back, Chauncey Bowens. This was his breakout game. He only had 12 carries, but he made the most out of that with 119 yards, 1 touchdown average, 9.9 yards per carry, and he was also reliable in the receiving game, had 4 catches for 22 yards, which was better than some of the wide receivers on Georgia. So ultimately, the stat that told the story, Bama 13 for 19 on third down. They just kept extending drives, slow drives, but they took control. They dominated the time of possession, and Georgia 2 for 8. They didn't have nearly as many third down attempts as Alabama, and when they had the chance to extend their drives, they just didn't do that. So Alabama, they're looking like they put that Florida State loss aside. They're looking a lot different. They're very disciplined. They only had 1 false start the entire game. Kalen DeBoer has got these players ready. And ultimately, if you're an Alabama fan, this is exactly what you want to see. Georgia, I still think they can make a run. It's just going to be hard with those 2 SEC losses this early in the season.
Yeah, so next we're going to be going to LSU versus Ole Miss. And the stat that told the story was Ole Miss had 166 rushing yards. LSU had 57. That, I don't even know what to say. I mean, how does that even happen? 60 rushing yards? You're usually going to have at least 100. But box score, Garrett Nussmeier had 197 yards, a touchdown and an interception. He has had a rough start to the year. And no LSU players really stand out stats-wise. I mean, Barian Brown, 5 receptions, 40 yards. I mean, starting running back Caden Durham was out, and their true freshman Harlan Berry did have to start, so that is kind of why the running game was a little bit shaky. But Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss, 314 yards, a touchdown, interception, but 17 carries for 71 yards. That's like Lamar Jackson type stuff, having 20 carries. Kawan Lacey had 23 carries for 87 yards, so they ran the ball heavily. But Chambliss still had 300 yards, and if you can run and throw that well, you're going to win most of the games that you play. Caden Lee had 4 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown, and they just kind of steamrolled LSU. I am shocked that that Garrett Nussmeier has had this rough of a start to his season. Has he? I think I heard that he has been dealing with a little bit of an injury, kind of like lingering.
Yeah.
So that sucks for him. But if you're gonna want to be a team that can really capitalize on being one of the best in the nation, you just got to play through that, or you got to be able to win against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss did have a backup quarterback playing, which we could argue that he could be better than the starting quarterback. Because one thing that I could say that really proves me that, or shows me that, is Ole Miss's starting quarterback against Kentucky did not do good against Kentucky. And then I think their backup came in late and finished the game for them and beat Kentucky. And then the last 2 games, he's been doing really good. So he could be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season, or just completely moving on. It's what the last thing that I'm going to say, because the last SEC game that we'll talk about, it's the SEC. LSU could win the national championship still. It's the hardest conference to play in, and that's Ole Miss could still be horrible by the end of the season. They could only get to 9 wins. They could only get to 8 wins. They could still only get to 7 wins. But being 5-0 in the SEC is a very good start to your season.
Yeah, so if you're Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, Trinidad Chambliss is your starter. I know Austin Simmons is good, but Trinidad Chambliss gives you the best chance to win. He is a Heisman Trophy candidate. I'm going to say that again, Heisman Trophy candidate. I don't think he'll win it, but he's definitely up there. Like JT said, 23 for 39, 314 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have an interception, but he also had 17 carries for 71 yards. And I think his rushing ability is what gives him the edge over a guy like Austin Simmons, who can't run the ball nearly as effective. And Trinidad Chambliss, he just knows how to win. He won a national championship. Whether that was D2 or not, it still means something, because he knows how to win. He showed that he's undefeated. Ole Miss is undefeated. And with Trinidad Chambliss, the dual threat quarterback, this offense is dangerous. Kawan Lacey also had a good game, 23 carries, 81 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Chambliss, there wasn't really one receiver that had an amazing game, but he spread the ball out a lot. Chunk plays in the middle of the field for 15, 20 yards, and that's what you want to see, not relying on one player to make all the plays, but just looking for who's open, make the right reads, don't force the ball to anything, and ultimately that's what Chambliss did. If you're LSU, I know you have Caden Durham, he's out, but they are just looking too one-dimensional. They're relying on Garrett Nussmeier, who hasn't been playing great, dealing with an injury, to completely carry him, to carry LSU. Their run game, they only had 57 rushing yards, which, if you can't run the ball, I don't think you have a good shot to win. Garrett Nussmeier, he didn't play that great. He had a pretty bad interception, only 197 yards. Aaron Anderson, the receiver, he didn't step up. I think he only had 1 catch for 12 yards. The electric speedy receiver, he needs to do better. Ultimately, LSU, every year they have an amazing offense. It's their defense that holds them down. And if you're an LSU fan, this must suck, because the one year your defense is elite, I think that they're a top 10 defense in college football. They've been playing outstanding. Their offense just can't hold their side of the bargain. And this is a very concerning loss for LSU. Because you look back, that Clemson loss, Clemson win, I should say, that should not have been that close. It was the offense that just didn't play well that made the game close. And some of their other wins, Florida, their offense wasn't great. And ultimately, I feel like they might have a hard time getting into the playoffs with this offense. But like JT said, it's the SEC. It's so unpredictable. They could go on. They could win the national championship. Nuss could win the Heisman. We never know. It's week 5. We still don't know much about any team. This is just my immediate takeaways. So ultimately, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you should be pretty happy. And Trinidad Chambliss, I'll just say he should be the starter. He gives Ole Miss the best chance to win.
Yeah, so big upset alert. Florida State just beat Virginia, and Florida State never led the game. So that's all I need to say for you to know that something happened to Virginia, because that Virginia team was horrible last season. I think they got like 3-4 wins. We're going to be at that game next week, Louisville versus Virginia. That will be a fun game. We'll definitely be posting a video on that. But awesome for Virginia. I mean, they're a basketball school, you could say, but they've just had a rough go at it for the past couple years in both sports. And for Virginia fans, that is awesome. But Florida State never won. Or never won. They obviously didn't win. But Florida State never had a lead. And that's going to lose you the game, obviously. And they made it close. They were tied, and they did go to overtime, but you got to catch the ball. And if you watch the game, you know what I mean. Florida State's one of their wide receivers kept bobbling the ball for like 9 feet, and he dropped it. It was counted as a drop. I mean, he caught it, but it was not in the end zone. And Tommy Castellanos had 250 yards on 32. He went 18 for 32, so just over 50%. 250 yards, a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. Did have 80 yards on the ground on 14 carries and a touchdown. Deuce Robinson did have. He's the guy who had the drop. He had 9 receptions, 150 yards, and a touchdown. So a big game, but had that big drop that overall was the factor that had them lose in OT. And something that you could say is you could have no mistakes throughout the game, which he did not have big ones. You could be having a great game. You're still in the driver's seat. You're still making this a close game, but just one mistake can change the entire outcome. And yes, there's plays that led to them losing, but that's a big play, and that's a big reason why they lost, because that would have been a touchdown. That would have gave them a lot of momentum. Virginia, Chandler Morris. Virginia did not play at the top of their level. They didn't, but they got it done. Their QB had 3 interceptions, 26 for 35, so he did not miss a lot. But only 230 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he had 3 picks. That is not good. He had more picks than Tommy Castellanos, but they found a way to get it done, and if you can do that, you're going to be successful. And they're ranked now, and great for that. Great for them. 9 players caught a pass on Virginia. That's another stat that told the story. There's no set WR1, and they spread the ball around a lot, and Virginia got the dub. Florida State, I need to see more from them because they did beat an Alabama team, but my head hurts thinking about how Florida State lost to Virginia and Florida State beat Alabama. I don't know what to think, but Quinn, you're up.
Yeah, so this game is weird because usually if you have an upset like this, something major happened, the other team just didn't play well, and that didn't happen. Florida State, I think, played a good game. I know Castellanos had those 2 picks, but ultimately they played a good game. Deuce Robinson stepped up. I know he had that drop, but he was good. There's nothing you can really point to. The stat that I put is that their offense never played with a lead the entire game, and that's just not what this Gus Malzahn offense is supposed to do. They want to get out to a lead early and just keep piling on the points. That's what they did against Alabama. That's what they did against all their other cupcakes. And this didn't happen, and Virginia, they also had their bad moments. Morris threw 3 picks, but ultimately Virginia, they just executed in the big moments, and that's what won them the game. This reminds me a lot of the Alabama-Vanderbilt game last year because Alabama didn't play bad. Vanderbilt had mistakes, but ultimately they won. They won the game. And I just want to know if Squirrel White's okay. I don't even know if he's even alive. If you don't know, he was the guy Castellanos threw it to him. He threw a pick in the overtime. The Virginia fans, they stormed the field almost immediately. Within 3 seconds, they were on the 5-yard line, and Squirrel White just got pummeled by every single person in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia. So hopefully he's still okay and alive. That probably sucks for him. But jokes aside, Florida State, I wouldn't freak out. You have a big one against Miami next week. I wouldn't freak out because there was no major weakness that there's nothing that I don't know how to even explain it. Just don't freak out if you're Florida State. I still think that they have a good team. Castellanos, he'll bounce back. The defense, they did allow 38, but Chandler Morris was great. The receivers were good. I just don't really know what to think of this game. It was a very weird game, but ultimately Virginia, they're a good team. And they could be a sleeper team in the ACC. Miami, they're the odds-on favorite to win the conference, but everyone's looking at that second team to be in that conference championship. Is it Georgia Tech? I don't know. Well, they should have lost to Wake Forest. They only won because of bad officiating. Louisville, they play Virginia next week. We'll see about that. Is it going to be Florida State? They're still in the mix. Maybe Duke, SMU as a wild card? I don't know. But Virginia is definitely in that tier of ACC title contenders, and it's going to be definitely interesting to see what they do moving on this season.
Yeah, so another big game that happened was Tennessee versus Mississippi State, and Tennessee had 335 passing yards, Mississippi State 180, and that's why Tennessee won. Now, there was big plays and there was all that, but Joey Aguilar had 335 passing yards, did have 2 interceptions, but they were both dropped and tipped passes, so he basically had 0 interceptions. He only had 1 touchdown, and that's why they did make it close. And the 2 interceptions, though they weren't his fault, that's still going to change the outcome of the game. And yeah, Deshaun Bishop had 72 yards and a touchdown, but yeah, it was a very close game. This Mississippi State team, do not overlook them because they're overlooked way too much still, even after that game. And yeah, Chris Brazell had 6 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown, 17.5 yards per catch. And Mike Matthews had 6 receptions also, 118 yards and 20 yards per catch. That is ridiculous. And they had a great game. Now, they were struggling a little bit, and they were losing for most of the game, I want to say. But the reason that Mississippi State lost was because Blake Shapen did not play like he did against ASU. He was 18 for 29. He did have a touchdown, but he had a pick 6 that he threw and 1 touchdown. Now, their running back, Fluff Bothwell, 23 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Their running backs both carried a lot. 3 touchdowns combined, almost 200 yards combined. Aiden Williams had a catch for 50 yards. That's awesome. Their tight end, I don't know how to say that. Seydou Traore, 4 receptions, 40 yards. Traore. 4 receptions, 40 yards, and a touchdown. And yeah, box score, you would not think that it was this close of a game, but Mississippi State's defense made it interesting. And yeah, don't sleep on this Mississippi State team because they can definitely beat you up. They're definitely going to make a bowl game at least, but don't be surprised if they are a very sneaky team to make it to the CFP. Now, they would have to only afford one more loss, but because they're probably the worst team in the SEC, their schedule is not going to be crazy hard. I mean, they do play Texas A&M next. That'll be a great game. Them versus Texas A&M. They play Texas, and then they play. Oh wow, I forgot how brutal the SEC was. Never mind. They're not. They're done. Play Texas A&M, Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Missouri, and Ole Miss. Yeah, that's gonna be a tough schedule for them, but still a great team, and I like this Mississippi State team a lot.
Yeah, so I just want to shout out Josh Heupel, Joey Aguilar. This offense looks like how it was in 2021 when they had Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. That year, they arguably might be better. Joey Aguilar, he's been doing outstanding. He did have 2 interceptions, not his fault. Both of those were drop passes. So he was 24 for 40, 355 yards, 1 touchdown. The receiver, Mike Matthews, he had 6 catches for 118 yards. He did great. But Chris Brazzell, just watching him play, and especially this game and the Georgia game, he's one of the best receivers in the country. I would put him in the tier with Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Jeremiah Smith. He's up there. Whenever Aguilar throws it to Brazzell, I'm so confident that it's a catch. He just has the big play ability, contested catch, speed, everything you want. He's basically like Jalen Hyatt. You could argue that he's better. This offense, they look outstanding. I want to give out credit to the secondary, Tennessee secondary. Mississippi State, Blake Shapen in the passing game, they just didn't really, it wasn't there. I know Brennan Thompson, he was out for the second half, but there wasn't really a reliable receiver. Aiden Williams had a big catch, but other than that, the secondary, they were great, even with Jermod McCoy being out. Blake Shapen, he did have a pick 6. He didn't play horribly, but he didn't play up to his standard. The only reason Mississippi State was in this game was because of their 2 outstanding running backs. Fluff Bothwell had his breakout game, 23 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Devon Booth, 17 carries, 58 yards, and 1 touchdown. So, great game by the running game. That's what kept them in this game. And they played with a lead for the majority of the game, but ultimately, when it came to overtime, Tennessee out-executed them. I'll just say this, don't count Mississippi State out. They're not in the top 25. I don't think they are. But in my opinion, they're a top 25 team. They've been playing like it. They have a brutal schedule. They do, but ultimately they look like a top 25 team, and who knows if Anthony Evans doesn't drop that pass in overtime on 4th and goal in the end zone. Who knows what happens? Maybe they could win this game. I don't know. Mississippi State, I don't think they'll make it to the college football playoff. I don't even know if they'll get up to 8 wins, but they're a good team. Don't count them out. This isn't like last year where it's basically a bye week. You have Mississippi State, easy win like it was for every SEC team. I don't think they won a single SEC game. They're a threat, and they're going to have some upsets. ASU counted them out. Mississippi State, they beat ASU, and I feel like they're going to upset a team that Texas A&M. That game scares me as a Texas A&M fan. I'm worried, but the only reason I feel somewhat confident is it's not in cowbell country. That place is so annoying. But ultimately, Mississippi State, they're a good team. And Tennessee, their offense, their secondary, they're elite. I think they'll make it back to the college football playoff. They're much improved from last year. Mm-hmm. And
shocking,
ultimately,
shocking too.
They have a great team, well coached, good offense. And if I were a fan of both teams, I'd be happy with this performance.
Auburn versus Texas A&M. If I'm a fan of either of these teams, I would not be happy because this was a sloppy game for both teams. And in college football, 2 teams can't lose. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. And it seemed like both teams lost this game. Texas A&M did have 200 rushing yards, and Auburn had 50 rushing yards, which is not Auburn-like because this entire season they've been a heavily run offense. Here's where you want to worry. Auburn did not This is actually crazy. Auburn did not complete a third down. 0 for 13. Texas A&M had 115 penalty yards. That is like, what in the entire crap is going on? Marcel Reed had 200 passing yards, 15 for 22 on his completions. Did have an interception, but it was a dropped screen pass and it was intercepted. I don't know what to think here because their offense did not look great. I mean, Le'Veon Moss looked absolutely absurd, and Casey Quinn. I'm gonna need your help. Concepcion. Okay. Wow, this is weird. Casey Concepcion had 7 receptions for 121 yards, but Marcel Reed did not have. He had a game, but I feel like if you're gonna want to stay competitive in the SEC, you're gonna have to score a lot of points, and it was just a very heavily defensive game. Jackson Arnold was 18 for 33, only 120 yards. That's it. No touchdowns, no picks. I don't know what to say about that one. Jeremiah Cobb had did not have a big game. Cam Coleman had a very quiet game. Eric Singleton did have 5 receptions for 50 yards. And yeah, very, very weird game. Not what any of us were expecting. And very boring game. I feel like that's what happens in the SEC sometimes. It's going to be 13-0 or 13-10, 7-5. That's not even a legit score. No one's going to score safety. But those games in the SEC. A lot of big teams can have those games. Penn State and Oregon were at 3-3 for a good amount of the game. That's just going to happen whenever you're two great teams, and that's what happened today.
Yeah, so this was a very weird game. Texas A&M, they dominated the entire game. They almost doubled every single stat, but they just couldn't execute. They had 113 penalty yards, which is the most in program history since 2014. They just couldn't execute when they got into the red zone or even in the 40-yard line, which is why since that opening drive they didn't have a single touchdown. This should have been a 42-10 blowout, but they just couldn't execute, and that's definitely worrying. I do think that they could get it done, but this was the breakout game from Le'Veon Moss. He had 21 carries, 139 yards, and 1 touchdown against Auburn's run defense, they're very good. I did not think that I knew that we were going to have to switch from a pass-first offense eventually because that's just not what Mike Elko wants to do. I did not think it would be this week because Auburn's run defense is elite. But our running game, Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, Ruben Owens got some carries. We look back to what we want to do and run the ball. Casey Concepcion had another amazing game to cap off his amazing season. 7 receptions for 119 yards. Marcel Reed was all right. He had 15 for 22. 207 yards and an interception, no touchdowns. Total yards, Texas A&M had 414. They had 207 passing yards, 207 rushing yards. They almost doubled Auburn in every stat. They might have even done that. They had 21 first downs. They just couldn't execute. For Auburn, I would be even more concerned. I'm not gonna criticize Jackson Arnold too much. This is kind of what I thought he would be. I think he could be Peyton Thorne, but maybe don't lose them the game as badly. He had 33 passing attempts. I think if you're Auburn, you want him to have 20 around under 20. The thing that frustrates me, and if you're an Auburn fan, this should frustrate you a lot. Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Alston had 8 combined carries. Why are we going away from the run game the moment it fails? We saw this against Oklahoma, and they were lucky that they were in that game too. Against Baylor, against the other 2 teams, Ball State and South Alabama, they ran the ball, and they ran it all over Baylor, and that's what won them the game. So when we're going against Oklahoma and Texas A&M, why are we just not running the ball? They know that Jackson Arnold isn't the guy you want to rely on. They were going easy. Their defense was going easy on Jackson Arnold in practice so that he can get his confidence up. That's just, they don't trust Jackson Arnold. So if you don't trust Jackson Arnold to carry Auburn, why are you making him do that? Why are you having him throw the ball 33 times with a run game that it's not that it wasn't working. They just didn't run the ball at all. I feel like I was watching the game, and why is Jackson Arnold throwing on only on first down? They threw it every single play almost in the second half. And you have to run the ball. This is a run-first team. And if you're Auburn, I'm not going to blame this on Jackson Arnold. He didn't play well at all. He holds on to the ball too much, but this is on your coaching staff. I don't know what the game plan was here, but it didn't work. Auburn, they concerned me a lot going into this hard SEC schedule.
Yeah, so that's going to be it for all the SEC, and I think it was only SEC and ACC games because, we did Big Ten. Only Big 12 game that was really great was probably the ASU game, which my thoughts were kind of crazy.
Yeah.
If you're an ASU fan, I would be scared because the red zone offense is really bad. But
if you want to hear about this, we have another channel called AZ Sports Roundup.
We're gonna do a
video. Talk about ASU. Yeah. We'll make a video on that game. So if you're interested, go watch on that channel.
Defense is clutch. Prince Dorp was insane. And if you watch the PFF video, when did you watch the PFF video on ASU?
I did.
His freaking rating was crazy. But let's go to the AP poll, and I'm gonna give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 thoughts that I had. And Quinn, if you're editing this, if you could put up the AP poll, that would be great on this part.
Yeah, I will.
I like Virginia in the top 25. I think they earned that because they are.
They're 4-1.
So they do have a loss. They did lose to NC State. Wow, that's not good. But I like Virginia in the top 25. I think they earned it, and being 4-1 is they should be 5-0. You cannot lose to SC State, or North NC State, sorry. But I still like them in the top 25 because whenever you get a big ranked win against a top 10 opponent, I think you just automatically deserve to be in that. And I like that. I think Penn State should be out of the top 10. They have not done anything to prove that they're worthy of the top 10. I mean, they beat Florida International University. I think that's a big win. No, they lost to Oregon, who's a great team, and they didn't beat anyone else. They beat 3 nobodies. Villanova, no, that's not a big win. Penn State should not be in the top 10. Same exact thing for Texas. They're at number 9. Why are they still in the top 10? They shouldn't even be in the top 15. You could make an argument they shouldn't even be in the top 20, let alone the top 25. I mean, Texas has done nothing. The Texas ranking is completely based off of what Texas is as a brand. Texas, the school is crazy. They got all this money. They got all this NIL. They got all this fans. They got all this SEC crap. Texas has done nothing to prove that they are worthy of the top 25. Nothing. You beat Sam Houston. Give me a break. Texas should not be in the top 25, and that's a hot take for some people. They've done absolutely nothing except lose to Ohio State and Arch Manning have a horrible game against them. Iowa State could be higher than LSU. I think that's a pretty good take. I mean, I think Iowa State has proved some stuff. They beat U of A, which is a pretty good win. U of A was starting to look a little bit hot there, and then they fell off against Iowa State. Iowa State did beat Kansas State, Kansas State completely fell off. No one talks about them anymore. But I think Iowa State has proved that they should be in the top 25. I mean, Kansas State was still a good team at that point, and at that moment, they were still considered to be a great team. And I think that's what has earned Iowa State to keep going higher in the rankings. But I think they could be higher than LSU. I mean, LSU did beat Clemson, but that's not saying much also. So both those teams are kind of like in the mix. LSU does have a loss. Iowa State doesn't. But Iowa State did almost lose to Arkansas State, I'm pretty sure. And you could argue both of those could be flipped. But Georgia Tech, I think, could have fallen. They were 17th last week, and they're 17th this week. I do like that they didn't change at all, and they didn't go higher. But they got a win, but they should have lost to Wake Forest. And I think even if you get a win, I think you should still be able to lose rankings and fall down. I think that's happened to some teams. I think it should have happened to Georgia Tech. It frustrates me, but I mean, Georgia Tech is still a great team. They did beat Clemson, and I mean, I don't know what to think about Clemson. You could argue that Georgia Tech, I don't know. That's a tough one to pick, but 17 is definitely a interesting place to have Georgia Tech. There's a case for Mississippi State to be in the top 25 over ASU. Mississippi State beat ASU. But there's a case for Mississippi State to be in the top 25 because they hung with Tennessee. They were winning for a good amount of that game, and that's a tough one because ASU has beaten great teams, but Mississippi State has had a great first 5 games or whatever they've played, and I think there's an argument that Mississippi State could be in the top 25. If they win next week, I think they should definitely be in the top 25. I don't like Oklahoma moving up 2 spots. I think Texas A&M should be above Oklahoma, and I think Indiana should be over Oklahoma, and it's because Oklahoma didn't play this week. Oklahoma was at 7, and they moved up to 5. I do get that LSU and Georgia were in those spots, but still, you could put other teams there and keep Oklahoma at 7, or even drop down Oklahoma to 8. But moving up 2 spots, that's a little bit confusing, especially with John Mateer's injury. I don't know how that happens. But Indiana definitely, I think they could be higher than Oklahoma. They did lose to Iowa, a gritty win. And most people thought that if it was going to be a low-scoring game in Iowa was going to get the win. And they almost did. They kept it close, but I still believe in this Indiana team. I almost had Iowa beating Indiana. I still don't know why Oklahoma rised. That just confuses me. But yeah, those are my stuff. That was 7. But that's my takes on the AP poll. I think Florida State dropping 10 spots was good. I think they still could have dropped a little bit more, but I'm fine with them dropping that much. Alabama going up to 10 is interesting because it's all interesting because you're like, could Georgia be that high? Why were they that high? Then they did beat Tennessee. Should Tennessee be that high? They haven't beaten anyone, but it's crazy how all that stuff goes down. I'm fine with Alabama at 10. I'm fine with that because the AP poll loves Alabama. But yeah, those are my takes. Quinn, what do you got?
Yeah, so I don't have a huge problem with this AP poll than I have in some recent ones. I think this one's fine. My main thing, I'm going to piggyback on what JT said. Why is Texas and Penn State in the top 10? I know why. Because of preseason expectations. And we've seen 5 weeks of college football. We need to throw everything we've seen in the preseason out the window. Texas, the one team they played Ohio State. Yes, it was close, but really, Ohio State just dominated the entire game. Texas was just in it at the end. They played Sam Houston, San Jose State. Arch Manning looked awful against UTEP. They haven't done anything to deserve this ranking. The only reason is because they have someone like Arch Manning and because they're Texas, they're a national program that everybody knows. Let's just say If this was Northwestern, they wouldn't even be getting votes because their resume, just say Northwestern has Texas's resume, they would not get anywhere near the top 25.
No.
Texas, the only reason we're ranking them is because of our preseason expectations. They play Oklahoma in a few weeks. I think John Mateer is going to be out. Maybe you can say that's a fine win. I think Texas is going to blow them out because John Mateer is the heart and soul of Oklahoma. But you could say that counts. Maybe. I still wouldn't put them in a top 10 if they beat a John Mateer-less Oklahoma team. And Penn State, they've also done nothing. I would argue and say that they've looked worse against Texas because at least Texas dominated all the teams they've played other than Ohio State, except for UTEP, which Arch Manning kind of sold. Their offense, they haven't even looked good against the Villanovas, the Nevadas, the FIUs. And their offense, they kind of got exposed. Penn State, I think they're a top 25 team still. Their defense denied Dennis Sutton, Zariah Fisher. They're elite, but their offense, I said this in the preview video their reaction video to the Penn State-Oregon game, they're just not that good. Penn State, on a pure resume, the thing they have going for them is a quality loss to number 2 Oregon, which I don't think you should put a team that has a quality loss and has looked mediocre at best against poor competition, number 7th. I don't think that they should be, in my opinion, they haven't looked like a top 25 team. They don't have a top 25 resume. I get if you want to put them between like 15 or 20. 7's just way too high.
Yeah, that's gonna be it for today's podcast. I liked it. I think we kind of cooked on this one, but let us know on your thoughts. And if you made it this far, my wall ain't completely finished, but it'll be done by Tuesday whenever we upload our video. But that'll upload on Wednesday. I forgot. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode. I'm kind of tired. Definitely a long one. It's 9:30 here, but yeah, thanks, Quinn, for joining on, and definitely a great week of college football. And boys, girls, gentlemen, thank you. Don't take no college football for granted. It's a great sport. And, yeah, it's been JT checking out. That's Quinn Bewley. Peace out.